Hi, this is Phoenix, and I'd like to talk about my up-and-coming book, In Defense of the Mind. In Defense of the Mind is a philosophical treatise on the mind and on the philosophy of mind. Um, in the last video, I talked about dualistic existentialism, and I introduced that. Dualistic existentialism is the heart of this book. And to put it briefly, dualistic existentialism is the idea that we abstract our mind to be able to study it more in depth. And to be able to see it as an entity, and using Cartesian dualism to come to that idea, as well as combining the idea of existentialism, specifically the notion of responsibility, and essentially seeing our abstracted mind and the thoughts that we're able to study and look at self-reflectively with metacognition and the like as thoughts that we must be responsible for and aware of. At all times and at all costs. But there's a reason why I there's a reason why I created this theory. Arguably, the most important reason why I created it is because I wanted to talk about mental illness. Now, mental illness is highly misunderstood in society. Thomas Sawes points this out when he talks about our confusion with looking at mental illness, and how it's very, very different from the way that we look at physical diseases and physical ailments. And so the point that he brings up is this idea, that Thomas Sawes brings up, is this idea that essentially people with a mental illness are viewed as not having free agency, as not even having agency. They're also seen as not having responsibility. Thomas Sawes would go on the deep end and would say, in a way that I think is kind of extreme, that mental illness doesn't even exist. I do think that mental illness does exist. I think that there is biological evidence that it exists. There's psychological evidence that it exists. In my own life, the way it manifests with me, it would certainly be hard to deny. But I think that he's definitely onto something when he says that a person with a mental illness is viewed as not being responsible for their choices. They're not being responsible for what they've done and for what they do while they have a mental illness. Now, I don't want to take that too far, because I think that mental illness can indeed impair a person's ability to make judgments and to make decisions. I think that that must be taken into account. But the whole reason why I promote this idea of dualistic existentialism is because I want to recontextualize the problem. I want to redefine the problem. So people with a mental illness are seen as not having responsibility, but the whole reason why I come up with this idea of dualistic existentialism is to show that if they can be rational and can think about their own thought processes via the process of metacognition, then because they know what they're thinking, they can thus be responsible for their actions. So essentially I push this further by saying that, for instance, if a person is delusional, if that person can have insight and awareness into their thought process, and they can be aware of their line of reasoning and what leads them to have their delusions, then they can talk their way out of delusions. And they can do this by using logic and rationality, or more specifically dualistic existentialism, which, like I said, is this notion of self-reflecting and being responsible for that self-reflection and those thoughts that you have in general. And so, to close, I would just say this is an important theory for me, and the whole reason why I promote this idea is because I want, like I said, to recontextualize the problem, and I want people with a mental illness to not fall into the trap that they're not in control at all, because everything that's happening is simply neurobiological. The problem with this is it is a materialist stance, it is a physicalist stance, and I'm opposed to those views for many reasons, because it limits our control, it limits what we do, and it limits how we perceive ourselves. And I'm opposed to all of those things for reasons that you will find out if you read my book. My book will be coming out in February of this year of 2016. So keep a lookout for it. And anyway, this is Phoenix again, and thank you.